This is a Foster Care in Idaho special.
New changes at the Department of Health and Welfare are raising questions and concerns about the state of Idaho's foster care system. We spoke with Foster and Heart, a local foster care nonprofit, about changes they've seen. So what is your opinion on the state of Idaho foster care right now?
Yeah, in the last year, there's been a lot of changes that have happened. You know, some are good and some that we're still learning from. I definitely think we have a lot of foster parents right now, which is a good thing. But something we need to see is more foster parents willing to take on those older kids, like above age 5, and even sibling groups and teenagers. And then I think we would be in a really great place here in the state of Idaho in the foster care system.
What's kind of the difference that you've seen 5 years ago versus today?
I think one of the big things is community for foster families and children in foster care. I think 5 years ago, people kind of felt like they were on this own little island by themselves doing it alone. And now we've worked really hard to have community, not only for the children in care, which is very vital and important, but also for the families that are taking in the children. So they can learn, like, whenever they go through something, they have somebody to lean on that understands what they're going through. And so community is so powerful. And so that's pretty much what I think is one of the biggest things that we've seen in the last 5 years.
So as someone who's gone through this process yourself, can you tell me a little bit about how important having community was for you?
Yeah, I definitely, when I first started fostering, I was a single woman jumping like head first into this foster care world, and I didn't really have any community, and just meeting one person at a time and having them understand what it's like, walking the process, supporting bio families. A lot of people get into foster care maybe to add to their family, but really it's about coming alongside a family, helping them rebuild, helping them get back together. And sometimes that does not work out and you end up adopting, but definitely having someone who understands like the terminology, the court dates, all that stuff was really big. And so when something would happen, I wouldn't freak out because I had someone to go to who understood and had been there before.
What are some realities that many people don't see or know that's happening behind the scenes?
I think, you know, every neighborhood is in crisis. There's kids coming into care at all hours of the night, you know, every day. And we think, like, even if you live in a nice neighborhood, there could be kids that are hurting, that are broken, that are living in terrible conditions. And so we need people willing, not only just to open their homes to children, but open their hearts to kids. Maybe get involved in volunteering. You know, we run the Essentials Project, which you guys know. And even if people want to just get involved in giving to a child, their, you know, investment matters in the life of a child going through foster care.
Can you tell me about or talk about some of the trauma that these kids go through?
Yeah, well, if you can imagine, abuse is a big one, not only physical, but verbal abuse. A lot of kids are fending for themselves. I've had children who have come into my home who were taking care of their little siblings that didn't even have parents around. And so, yes, we know there's trauma when a child is removed from their home, but relearning how to, like, be a child is a big thing, and it's hard for kids to do. And so being a home that's willing to take a kid in, you know, despite what they look like on paper, despite what's going on the outside, and really help that child heal and get to the brokenness of the child and watch them thrive. One of my favorite things is watching a child change right before your eyes. They came in one way, and you get to see them walk out a completely different way because you've offered safety, security, and love. And also coming around their families. A lot of the bio families, it's been a generational thing. They may have went through foster care, they may have went through abuse. So reteaching them how to be parents is a big, huge thing. And so, you know, I always say we want happy, healthy, whole families in Idaho. And that's what foster care is all about, is getting families to be that in that place.
Yeah, so you just talked about a kid coming in who taking care of their younger sibling. They've gone through those types of things. A lot of times, kids come into foster care, they're placed in a wonderful home, but it's still really difficult for them. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, I think, you know, sometimes we think all they need is love or they need this or that, but I think meeting a child where they're at is the biggest thing, and that's when you see transformation. So like giving them the space that they need to walk through that healing process. And, you know, a lot of times, like, I always get kids that come through my home, and you know, they all have been through different trauma. And so trying to, like I said, meet them where they're at, make sure that you're a welcoming place for them, but not force them to go through whatever process you think. Or you think, oh, you need to get up and go to school today. Well, maybe they're not ready. They just were removed from their home yesterday. give them the time and the space to walk the process so that when they're ready, first week I have kids, I never have like these big, huge rules. I give them time to acclimate into my home, and then we start the process of teaching them what it's like every day to get up, do the things they need to do.
So can you talk about the changes that have happened in the past year and how you've walked alongside those?
Well, one of the big things that we've seen is the prevention, just trying to keep kids in their homes, which is obviously the goal. We want kids to stay in their homes. We don't want kids to have to go through the trauma of being removed, taken into a new home and learning a new life. However, I always want to make sure that we are keeping the best interest of the child at the forefront. And so sometimes we're seeing them come in later down the road with a little bit more trauma. But if we can keep the homes healthy and help these families grow and get over whatever hurdles they're in, I'm all for that.
Going back to what we were talking about a second ago, you were saying how amazing it is to watch a child kind of blossom or get back to before. Can you tell me more about that? I can't even imagine.
Yeah, a lot of times, when you get a call for a child, you get a kind of a rundown of what the child's like. And so a lot of times, they're letting you know because they need to, kind of the traumas they've been through or maybe the behaviors they've seen. And so you kind of decide, I'm going to take this child in not based on what the paper says, but based on what I believe this child is. And so you get him in your home and you've heard these things about him and you watch them just grow and thrive and blossom. And one of the things I love is watching my child help the healing process for other children that come through our homes. And my kids have been through it. They were removed. They were placed in multiple foster homes, and then they were adopted. And seeing how healthy they are now and whole they are, they get to help walk other children through that. And that is probably my favorite part.
In your opinion, what changes need to happen here in Idaho?
I think the biggest thing is, obviously, I'm very passionate about sibling groups staying together. And most of the time when a child comes in, they're not coming alone. They're coming with their siblings. And so one of the biggest thing, I think, training and equipping families to open their houses and their hearts to sibling groups is a big thing. And that's my passion. That's what I will never stop talking about, is keeping a sibling group together. A lot of times, there might be a sibling group where there's a 2-year-old and the oldest is a 15-year-old. Most people want that 2-year-old, but I just really want people to open their hearts to that 15-year-old as well. And so that's one of the big things I would like to see. And hopefully, even with just the state of Idaho in itself, that is our big push on families opening up to sibling groups and especially teenagers.
Do you see that being more of, I don't necessarily want to say problem, but decision from the foster or from a foster family side of them taking kids in, or is there any parameters on a state level?
I think obviously you have to have the space in your home, the ability to drive the kids but I think training and equipping, maybe it's coming alongside those families more. If they're going to take on a sibling group of 5, saying, okay, we're going to invest in this family to help them even more than what's going on right now in the state of Idaho. So I think that's a big thing too. I think when I got my 5, I was just a single woman by myself, and then I ended up with 5 kids, and the community wrapped around me. I had bunk beds made. I had people come dropping off gifts at my door. And I think too, just focusing on when someone's willing to open their home to a sibling group, really come around them, wrap around them with love and support.
Now I want to talk about Foster and Heart.
Yes.
How can people support you guys right now?
Well, we're doing a big Christmas drive right now. Our 5th annual Christmas party is coming up on December 6th, and it's so amazing. It's so fun. We invite the Treasure Valley, all the foster families in the Treasure Valley to come, and we open it up. We have a present room, so presents that are donated, we allow foster parents to go shopping so they can wrap those presents, put them under the Christmas tree for Christmas morning. A lot of our kids have never had presents under the tree. I remember last year, we had a sibling group run down the stairs. It was the first time they ever saw presents under the tree with their names on it. And so the community, by a simple way, could go shopping for us and allow us to give these presents to these families and to the kids so that they can feel just that love and blessing on Christmas morning.
Is there something on your guys' website so that people kind of know what gifts you need? We want some gifts for 2-year-old boys, or we want some gifts for 15-year-old girls.
We go all the way up to, for gifts, we'll go all ages. Especially teenagers, we ask for gift cards just so they can go shopping themselves.
Yeah.
But you can get anything. If you get a blocks, we'll make sure that gets to the kid that specific age that desires that. So any toy that you want to go shopping to Walmart or Target or Fred Meyer, grab those and then bring them to us. We'll have drop-off locations. We're about to launch that. And so we'll have all the information out on our website. I would just say that everybody can be a part of impacting a vulnerable children's life here in the Treasure Valley. You know, I think we all think that we have to be at a certain place in our life to make a difference. And I just would encourage anybody to step out, volunteer maybe at an event, or volunteer with a different organization that's focused on helping children in foster care. And I promise you will be blessed by it. But you don't have to open your home to children. You don't have to become a foster parent to make a lasting impact on a child's life.
This is a Foster Care in Idaho special.
CASA of Southwest Idaho shared worries they have about the state of Idaho's foster care system. In your opinion, what is the state of Idaho's foster care?
I think right now our state is still needs some improvement. We're still lacking in foster parents in some of our districts. We are still needing more resources for these kids to make sure that they're taken care of during their time in foster care. I think training the foster parents, bringing that back would be really beneficial so that they're prepared for these kids that are coming in with their past traumas and abuse that they've suffered, so that they're prepared to be able to help them as best as they can.
Does CASA see a lot of backlog of cases from the court side?
I would say cases take on average from our district about 22 months, which is longer obviously than we would like. Canyon County specifically only has one judge that sees all these cases, so of course she is extremely busy. So trying to make sure that we get everything on her schedule and she fits everything in while also trying to be a human and have a life outside of it, that is definitely a struggle in Canyon County.
Is that, I just don't know, is that a normal thing in other states or areas to only have one judge?
I don't know what like the average number would be on how many to have, but you know, for our district, we're serving over 500 kids, the most in the state. And we only have one judge, whereas other districts have multiple judges or at least a couple to kind of bear the weight and it not just be on one judge. In our rural communities, it's a little bit easier. We don't have the number of kids and cases. So one judge there has been fine, but Canyon County definitely could use some help in that department. Not that Judge Tucker isn't doing an amazing job, because she is.
You touched on training twice. Can you tell me a little bit about that process and how it worked?
Yeah, so the department, when you became signed up to be a foster parent, part of that process was going and getting trained, basically giving them an idea of what the process of being a foster parent looks like, you know, behaviors and things that they could see with the kids coming in with, and just other ideas of what the foster care system as a whole looks like to prepare them for, you know, when our CASAs come in. The foster parents don't exactly know who we are and what we do, and we come in with a court order and say like we need to see the kid, and you know what the social worker's role is in it, and you know how the court process plays out. I think any of those things that we can give foster parents before they even decide to completely become one is very beneficial, and they'll be set up more for success and being able to focus more on helping the kid instead of trying to strategize and figure out all these different places that these kids need to be.
So, Alicia, you've come into this position more recently. What are you seeing now that you didn't know maybe was going on before coming into all of this?
Yeah, so I've always had a background in nonprofits, but child welfare is definitely new for me. There's a couple different things. I don't think I realized how long the process is and how long these kids are in care before a decision is made on whether they're going to be adopted, whether they can return with their parents. It's 22 months for a kid. That's a really big part of their childhood. So I was sad to hear that and that it takes that long. But there is processes that we have to go through, so I understand that. The other thing that surprised me was in a lot of these cases, if a parent is an abuser, whether that be physical or sexual, a lot of times they're not getting charged on these cases. So, you know, for me to think about our animal safety protocols and the laws that abide to them, you know, if you hurt a dog or hurt an animal, like you could face jail time. But if you hurt your own child, you're not being charged with that. And so that was very surprising to me, that there isn't more of a jurisdiction around dealing with parents who are perpetrators. I think the other thing that plays into that is we also just don't have the mental health facilities and resources for the parents that have these. A lot of people have, it takes a very trained person to work with an individual who was a perpetrator. And we just don't have that stuff here. So to be able to help the parents through that and come out better in the end, there's just not the resources for it. So it's hard to believe that that parent is going to change because they don't have resources to change on what they've been doing.
Is Idaho doing enough to protect foster kids?
I think there's definitely more that could be done, especially on the judicial side of things. A lot of our parents who abuse these children don't get charged with that. And I think that's something that we really need to look at, because if you're not having consequences for actions that you're doing, why would you change? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a huge one. Again, I hope that they can try to, like I said, bring more people in, educate them on the needs of things, not bring such a, I think the idea is like you bring positive light to it and that will make people come. But sometimes in instances like this, like I think once people know the full truth and know what is happening to these kids, it actually will cause them to want to help more and be a part of the solution. Because these things are really tough and hard, and these children are the future of our communities. And if we are not taking care of them and helping them in their childhood, we're not setting our society up for success in the future. I see nothing more important than making sure that our kids grow up safely, loved, cared for, so that they can be adults and be that adult in the world as well.
The state has made changes to the foster care system over the past year. Are these changes helping?
I think it's a little bit hard for me to completely speak to that. On the preventative side of things, we haven't learned much about what that process is and what their success rate is. We're only seeing the failed ones. And when the failed prevention cases do come in, they've tended to be worse in abuse. And you know, that's really unfortunate for the kids and for us. Obviously, the not training the foster parents has had a huge impact on our kids. And again, it's not a dig at foster parents or the department, but it's more of just getting the knowledge out there for how important these people are and how important it is to be trained and understand what they're getting themselves into. Because yeah, when the foster parents are not prepared for these kids to come in, it greatly increases the risk of re-abuse happening.
So you're saying that the prevention cases, sometimes they're worse. Why is that?
I think because in the prevention cases, one thing I do know is the goal is to keep the kids in their house and provide services to the family and support to the family to try to work through it. Unfortunately, I think there's just some parents out there that's not going to work for them. And the abuse just continues to happen. And I think almost in a way they might feel like they got away with something because the kids weren't taken away. And so they're kind of testing their limits. And I don't know what the line is or the boundary is of when you're in a preventative case, like what takes it to the next step of now you're removing them. I don't know what those are yet.
This is a Foster Care in Idaho special.
We spoke with the Department of Health and Welfare on the changes that have been made. When do you make the decision to move kids from one county to another?
Yeah, great question. We are always looking for opportunities to keep kids as close to home as possible. Yeah. So if you think about a concentric circle around that physical address of where that kiddo stayed, and then we slowly start look after if there's any kin options or fictive kin options, and then we move to a general foster home, and you slowly start moving out of that circle. If they're close to a county line, that can absolutely happen.
We spoke with Alicia at CASA for District 3, and she was telling us that Canyon County only has one judge. Is that kind of like a common thing? Is the department, do you guys have a lot to do with the number of judges or anything with the court system?
When it comes to the actual number of judges, that's an administrative office of the court's purview to do that, and then we just work under the system that's been set up by the courts in each area.
Does the department believe that there needs to be more programs like Foster and Heart that provides housing for siblings?
Yeah, there are roughly 30 congregate care providers across the state. We actively engage with them to make sure they're aware of what we're seeing by way of trends. And larger sibling groups isn't necessarily one of those trends. We see what we see more often, and thanks for the question, what we see more often is older kids having an unplanned move or two out of the general foster home, funneling through PAC while we find them a place to go, and usually that could be a congregate care setting. So it's more that we need more general foster homes for older kiddos.
For a lot of families, I think it is easier for them to take younger kids versus older kids. What's something that you would say to families to help encourage or maybe open their minds up to taking in a teenager?
Wow, really great question. Thank you for asking. You were there once, right? We were all teenagers once, right? And think about that time in your life. There's so many things happening in your world, but think about it in a world where maybe you didn't have pro-social, proactive guardians in your life, and those skills that they taught you, even subtly taught you, aren't being taught to those kiddos, and so they need someone to help them with those things, and that's part of the reason we believe that they act out a little bit more than others. They're teenagers, which is a thing, but also they've missed a they've kind of they're on pause. Their development is on pause because they're going through some stuff in their parents' lives that they're being subjected to, or that has happened in their parents' lives that has been led to where they're at, because it's those sort of unstable homes trickles down to those kids. And so I would just ask that folks remind themselves that they were teenagers once too, and to really open your heart and recognize you could be such a value component to this kid's future. And you may only have that youth for 10 days, 2 weeks, a month, but that month could be the most impactful thing in that kid's life.